You have no idea how much you're capable of. I never saw myself here. I never saw myself as a leader. I never saw myself, winning awards like I've been winning. Just, go for it. You're capable of so much more than you believe. Hi, my name's Leanne Pilkington, and you are listening to Property Investory.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast, Leanne. Really a pleasure to be able to have you on. I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about your story. Firstly, let's start off with saying your full name, what you do, and since you've done so much, feel free to brag about it.
Yes. Okay. So Leanne Pilkington, I'm the Managing Director of the franchise organisation Laing and Simmons, where I've been for 25 years. I'm also the current President of the Real Estate Institute of New South Wales, and I sit on the board of the Real Estate Institute of Australia. And I am also the co-founder of a networking group called Real Women in Real Estate, which is just about supporting women in and around property.
Wow, you've done so much.
Yeah.
We're going to have to delve a little bit more deeper into all of this as
Sure.
well. So maybe share with us in, say, 60 seconds or less, what do you actually do in any given day at the moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. Laing and Simmons has 45 offices in and around New South Wales. And so because it's a relatively small number, my days are really varied. So I'll be talking to our business owners. Tomorrow I'm going out to an auction to support one of our team members with his very first auction. I could be organising training. I've got my own podcast called Courageous Conversations. So I host podcasts as well. So yeah, all kinds of different things, signing new franchise agreements, going out doing new business presentations to potential franchisees, interviewing new team members, you name it. It's marketing plans, social media plans. That's what I love about my job, is just the sheer variety of everything I get to do every day.
Excellent. Well, let's delve a little bit more to get to know you personally. Firstly,
Sure.
Let's share with the audience, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Forestville and Belrose on the northern beaches of Sydney. Went to high school at Davidson High, and my parents then, my father had a real estate business in the Hills District, and that he ended up moving the family when I was 18. Moved the family over to Castle Hill, and I still live now in Glenhaven, which is northwest of Sydney, just near Dural.
You're not far from me. I'm in Kellyville. So.
There you go. My brother's in Kellyville. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So growing up over in Forest, did you say Forestville?
Forestville. Yeah, Forestville.
Forestville.
Yeah.
What was that like? As a little, going to primary school and all that there.
Gosh, it's a long time ago. I can barely remember, but I think I had a pretty typical upbringing. Dad wasn't a real estate agent in those days. He was traveling. He was a traveling salesperson, traveling around the state. Mum was a stay-at-home mum. I've got a sister who is 3 years younger, brother who's 8 years younger than me, and so Mum and Dad didn't have a lot of money in those days. I remember. It was an exciting day if Mum could actually afford to buy us an ice cream on the way home from school.
Wow.
But things changed as we got older, and Dad started his real estate business. Actually, he started his real estate business in, I think it was 1973. He opened his first office, and within 3 months, he got very sick with glandular fever. And so my poor mum, who'd been at home with kids for about 12 years, had to go and run the business whilst Dad recovered. And she ended up being really good at it. So Dad ended up opening another office for Mum because they couldn't work together. That's a bit tough, right? And Mum was she was a great real estate agent, and she both Mum and Dad stayed in the business until they retired. Yeah, so.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So in Castle Hill, back in the 70s, it was still kind of farm area, wasn't it? Around
a lot of it.
Yeah, a lot of it.
Yeah, a lot of it. Where I live at Glenhaven, you would know Gilbert Road.
Yes.
Back in those days, that was a dirt track.
Yes. That's right.
Yeah, so yeah, it's changed massively, and it's still changing, right? I mean, a lot of Kellyville, where you are, there's that was all farmland and
That's
that sort
right.
of stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of development going on
Oh,
around.
still is. I mean, even North
Yeah,
Kelville, there's still a lot of blocks of land out of
massively.
Box Hill and further out that way. It's still a lot of development that's still going on. So
There sure is. Yeah, yeah. We actually we had a deposit on a property in Box Hill. Gosh, 25 years ago now, and it was $330,000 for 5 acres of land.
wow.
And the day of exchange, the vendors changed their mind, and of course that parcel of land maybe 3 years ago sold for multi millions of dollars. That 5 acres, it's like I just get depressed every time I think about it. Never mind.
Oh, opportunities come, opportunities go.
Yeah, so they say. Yep, so they say.
Yes, that's right. So tell me a little bit more about, I guess, back in the 70s all the way to again, maybe, when
Sure.
Castle Hill started to actually change.
Yeah. Yeah,
what was actually the name of the agency that your parents ran?
Dad started a brand called Anvil Realty, ANVIL, and it was because it was short, it was strong, and it was at the beginning of the alphabet. Because back in those days, right, everybody used the yellow pages and the phone book to find whatever they needed. So a different time. And then he ended up with 3 offices in the Hills District. And then there was a brand from the US that came out called ERA. And their premise was, and I don't know whether you ever watched MASH,
Yes.
but Colonel Sherman Potter, he was literally their poster boy. And we had this poster in the office of him with his, his
hard hat.
Metal, his hard hat on, and saying, if we can't sell your property, we'll buy it. And so that's going right back into the late 70s. And that was their premise. Dad only ever had to buy one property from somebody, but yeah, we actually did buy a property. And of course, now in the US, iBuyers are everywhere. It's a very, very common phenomenon over there. Still not very popular here, but and then the Ray White brand in 1987 bought out ERA, and so Dad converted his business to a Ray White office.
Ray White.
Yeah.
Which is still there, actually. I actually know the owners there.
Ray White Castle Hill. Yeah, Dad used to own Ray White Castle Hill, and in fact owned that building. So
Wow, that's excellent. Family business that's still there, and you've obviously carried on the brand from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit more about then, I guess, growing up. You said remember when you were 18 years old, you actually moved over to Castle Hill.
Yeah.
What was that like for you? Because Castle Hill, I mean, nowadays it's about an hour and a half away from the city to get there. But back then, as you said, it was quite still a lot.
You drive really slow. I can get to the city in 35, 40 minutes. What are you doing?
I must be stuck in traffic then.
You must be. I mean, I drive fast, but I don't drive that fast. But certainly back in those days, so this is my 40th year in real estate. I'm giving away my age, but I'm 58. Went straight from high school. In fact, I was Dad's Saturday girl. Sunday girl, because I was a competitive squash player. So I used to play squash every Saturday, and I worked for Dad every Sunday. He paid me $5 a day. I'm old, but I'm not that old. He was tight, right? I was planning on being a school teacher, but I went up to the Gold Coast, as everybody did everybody still does, for schoolies. Yes, schoolies was invented back in those days. And I ran out of money, and he was going to send me some money so long as I could work for him until uni went back. So I was going to go to teachers college, and of course I never went. I stayed, and I enrolled to become a valuer. So I used to drive, and in those days it did take about an hour and a half. I used to drive from Borkham Hills, the office was originally, to the city, to Ultimo, 3 nights a week for 4 years to become a valuer. So I was working 7 days a week. I was studying 3 nights a week for 4 years. Amazing the energy you have when you're young.
Yeah, I was going to say, gosh, that's full on.
It was really, really full on. I don't actually know how I did it, but I was determined. I'm one of those people that if I start something, I like to finish it. And I realized within the first 12 months, I realized valuation was not for me. It's very, I was never very good at maths. And of course, it's all maths. And it's not really, you don't have a lot to do with people really as a valuer. And I'm a people person. But anyway, I started it, so I finished it. And yeah, I went on to work for Dad. I started as the receptionist, worked through property management, and then I was a salesperson, and I worked for him until I was in my kind of late 20s.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. He used to fire me every Friday. He thinks it's funny now. He tells people the story, but yeah, we used to fight, and that was, much my fault as it was his, if I'm honest.
Well, it is hard. I've worked with my parents before in their business, and it's challenging because we have different thoughts. There's one way that we can do it, but then they want it done that way, and it ends up with that. But at the end of the day, we're family.
Yeah, that's right. And you don't have the boundaries, right? That you have. There's no way any of my team would ever dream of speaking to me the way I spoke to my dad, and vice versa, right? So I often say that unfortunately, I didn't really get good at what I do until after I left Dad, because I had to learn to have a bit more respect for the people I was working for. And I really, I didn't show Dad the respect I should have probably during those times. Hopefully he won't watch this podcast.
Yeah, just make sure we'll cut that one out.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So I remember reading up on your profile as well. You went to Western Sydney as well. At what stage did you actually go further studies?
Yeah, I did. I went back to university in my 40s and did an MBA. And I did that because one of the things, I don't have too many regrets in my life, but one of the things that I did regret was not going to uni straight from school. I did study, obviously, and it wasn't just valuation. I did my real estate license. I did my auctioneer's certificate. I did a whole lot of stuff. But I regretted not actually having that university degree. And by that stage, I was also the GM at Laing and Simmons. And I felt if anything happened to my job at Laing and Simmons, nobody would give me a job at that level unless I had that qualification behind me. And I'm not even sure that that's as relevant today. It's interesting with education. It wasn't that important, then it became incredibly important. And now I think whilst uni, uni is a wonderful, it's wonderful to learn, but there's lots of people that just get out there and hustle, right? And they don't necessarily have that, sorry, I've just got people calling me. You don't necessarily have to have that formal degree these days. So it's interesting. Have you seen that? Yeah.
Yes. Well, I actually am in the government, university sector as well too. Okay. And it's actually going through a huge reform. So more recently, there was a section that we actually rolled out at the university that was actually allowing for people to be able to, or the students to be able to choose the actual subjects within the whole degree.
Nice. Yeah.
And that makes it give a flexible option, because the thing is at the end of the day, a lot of students just don't want to just do that degree and be, wedged into that. They say that they want to actually have choice, which is what's happening across the board. All the open universities and so forth going online, they just pick and choose, which actually allows them to be able to formulate that course that they actually want to complete to their degree. And that's allowing them to be able to do a lot more than what they are before back then. So the education is only one aspect, but as you said, it's the experience that employers are now looking for more than anything else. And I would, hands down any day, give somebody a job who has more experience than someone who's just graduated out of university. And,
absolutely.
That's what's happened nowadays.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I'm in a position at the moment where, because as you said, I've bought into, I've put together a group that has bought the Laing and Simmons brand, and there's all different areas that I want to expand into, and I'm just looking at who I need for those roles. And as much as I love the enthusiasm of youth, old chicks rule. Can I tell you? Middle-aged
That's
women.
Wisdom.
Yeah, they. It's not just wisdom; it's empathy, it's stability. I know people that are building their careers typically only want to hang around for 2 or 3 years.
That's so true.
In my world, 2 or 3 years goes by like that, and it's like, oh God, have I got to recruit again? Have I got to retrain again? Whilst every new person brings different opportunities and different experiences, it's just a pain in the neck.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right. So
the last thing you want to do is, after you've trained them all up, spent at least a good 12 months getting them into that position, then they leave a year later. It's like going to start all over again. And you
I
go,
know. What's worse though, right? You train them and they leave, or you don't train them and they stay.
oh, I don't know. That one's comes from experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's take a step back, Leanne.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been fantastic. So you've obviously achieved an MBA and a managing director as well.
Yeah.
A fantastic group. Let's take a step back to maybe say the journey between, I guess, being a real estate agent, working with your family, all the way to that. Like, I want to actually see the progression.
Sure.
Tell us, after you actually went out on your own to work,
Yeah.
whether or not well, tell us a little bit more about that story and that journey.
So yeah, I ended up going to Europe for 3 or 4 months, as all Australians do, and Dad would never let me have holidays, so I actually had 4 months paid leave. So I went to Europe, and on the plane on the way back, I thought, yeah, I can't do this anymore. And so I got off the plane and I resigned. What a terrible, awful thing to do. But I didn't, it wasn't my intention. It was only, when I got away and actually had that clear brain space that I realized it's just not what I want to do. And part of the problem, real estate's an incredible career, but as I'd already said, I was working 7 days a week. I was studying 3 nights a week. A course that challenged me intellectually. So it wasn't like I was just, cruising through. And I was just burnt out. I think if I had have got into selling real estate in my 30s, I'd probably still be doing it now. But I started too early. I went too hard and I burnt myself out. So I actually temped for a while because I didn't know, I didn't really have any skills other than I was good with people. I couldn't, that computers were barely invented in those days, embarrassingly. So I temped for a while, and after about 3 or 4 months, the recruiters said to me, actually, Leanne, we think you would be a great recruitment consultant. And I said, okay, well, I don't even really know what you people do, quite frankly. So I went in and I spent some time with them, and I did, in fact, spend 3 years as a recruiter.
Wow.
They had, in those days, it was a company called Centacom. And they had over 200 consultants around the country. And in my second year in that business, I won their Consultant of the Year, which was amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, I was really proud of that. And it was a great job. I really enjoyed it, but it was a bit repetitive for me, because you're doing the same thing. You're finding new business, you're interviewing people, So I was offered a job. An old boyfriend of mine was a shopping centre manager over at Brighton Les Sands, and he offered me a job as his assistant centre manager. So I looked after the shopping centre, but also the office tower next door. So I'd never had any experience in retail or commercial. So that was really, I often joke that the only experience I had before I got to the shopping centre was that I'm a really good shopper. But other than that,
helps.
It made a big difference. So I was there for, my old boyfriend got the sack and I got his job. So I was promoted to centre manager, and he still speaks to me. And I stayed there for 3 or 4 years. And unfortunately, my regional manager at the time thought that our relationship should be somewhat different than it was. And so I had one of those awful, #MeToo moments that I did sort of come out and speak about on LinkedIn a year or 2 ago. If anybody wants to see the story, they can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's all there. And so I left that job, and I worked for a property developer for 12 months.
Gosh,
and he focused on retail. So my shopping centre experience was good there, but that job wasn't really what I thought it was going to be. And he ran out of money, and so I ended up getting offered another old boyfriend. There's a pattern, right? Thankfully, I'm happily married now and have been for 30 years. Another old boyfriend offered me a job as the marketing and admin manager or franchise coordinator, I think my original title was, at Laing and Simmons. He was the general manager. And so I went there, and it was really interesting because I'd known him, obviously, you know, we were no longer in a relationship and hadn't been for quite some time, but we'd stayed friends. So I was very well aware of the Laing and Simmons brand, and I really liked it. And I was horrified when I got there. We did some research, and I found out that the franchisees hated each other, and they hated head office even more. And I said to my friend, all right, we've got two choices here. Either I go and find a new job, because I've just been in a toxic culture for years, and I just can't do it. Because I'd taken quite a big step back from a centre manager to a franchise administrator. It was like a 30% pay cut back, 25 years ago. So it was a big step backwards for me, but I just wanted to be in a happy place. You know, I just wanted to enjoy what I did and the people around me. And so when I found out that Laing and Simmons wasn't as, happy as I thought it was, I said, okay, either I'm going to go find another job, or we can work together to change the culture. And he was up for that. And so that's what we did. And that culture change is not fast, right? But it's changed massively now. And if you talk to anybody about Laing and Simmons, that's one of the things that they will tell you is that we have an amazing culture within the organisation. So I'm really proud that we could actually affect positive change in that space.
Gosh,
so, yeah,
it's amazing to be able to hear that. And I mean, like, that's the thing, I would have been shattered. Like, if I had met a celebrity or a star that I thought that was amazing, but then I heard in the background he did all sorts of strange things or different things that were not congruent with that, I'd be like, oh gosh, change of mindset. But you actually took the reins on its horns and just went straight for it and try to help them make that change.
That's the kind of girl I am.
You like to take action.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. So how long were you actually in that role where you progressed? Because
I've sort of after I started in Laing and Simmons in 1995. In 1997, the business was bought by our commercial franchisee. So they were both a franchisor and a franchisee. And very soon after they bought the business, they fired the general manager, my old boyfriend. And
there seems to be a recurring pattern.
There seems to be a pattern, right? Yeah. I'm a hard worker. What can I tell you? And one of the things that was really, one of the lessons that I learned, the people that owned, when I started at Laing and Simmons, the people that owned them owned a lot of different businesses. They owned wineries and car parks and all kinds of things. And so the CEO was a man that I didn't really know very well. I knew, I knew him, but he had very little to do with me or the Laing and Simmons side of the business. But when Rob and Tony bought the business, they actually said to them, whatever you do, hold on to Leanne, because she's the one who's actually running the business. And so I didn't know that he even knew what I did. And so the lesson for me was, it's the things that you do when you don't realise anybody's watching, that really, that was what set me on my own leadership path, really.
Yeah, and it sounds like actions spoke louder than the words.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. When Rob and Tony bought the business, Tony moved into and they fired the previous GM. Tony moved into that role, and so Tony and I worked together for about 18 months, and I loved it. I always saw myself as a really good number two. Tony's a very charismatic man, and everybody wanted to be around him, and he would go out and, he would, as charismatic men tend to do, like, oh, we'll make this happen. And then he would leave and I'd run around in the background making everything happen. And so he was, I tell my promotion story often because Rob and Tony, when they bought the business, I'd just been promised a pay rise, right? And as I said, I took a 30% pay cut to get there, and I was working again 7 days a week. It was, that's just seems to be who I am. And I had just negotiated a pay rise, and then all of a sudden these guys were buying the business and everything was off the table, and I was filthy. So I stormed down because I knew the guys, they were my franchisees. So I stormed down there, and I was determined to get a pay rise. And
too.
an hour later, I turned around with no pay rise and no pay rise in the foreseeable future, excited about what they could bring to Laing and Simmons. And so that was another lesson to me. If you can sell your vision for the future clearly enough, people will come along for the ride just to see, if you can get people excited about it. And so for a long time, they got me very, very cheap, I can tell you. And then Tony was on his way. He was going on holidays. And he was walking out the door, and as he left, he went, see you later, kiddo. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And then he walked backwards and said to me, by the way, you are much better at this franchising stuff than I am. I'm going back to selling commercial real estate. You're going to be my GM. Anyway, I'll see you in a fortnight. And off he went. And I'm like, what just happened? And I still didn't get a pay rise, right? It was, it was like, show me what you can do. And 6 months later, I got a really good pay rise. But so that was crazy. And like I said, I never saw myself as a leader. And so I rang all of my franchise owners and said, look, this is what's happened. And they were overwhelmingly excited about it. And I kind of rang all of them, got off the phone and thought, that's weird. Why are they so happy? I don't think I can do this. Why do they think I can? And so I rang a few of them back and said, why are you so happy about this? And they said, Leanne, we know how much you care about us. We know how much you care about our businesses, and we know how much you care about the Laing and Simmons brand. And that's what we want. So that's what people want from their leaders, right? They want to know how much you care. So that was another really, really important lesson for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an amazing story. It's like I'm on the edge of my seat going, okay, this is amazing.
Oh, there's so much more.
Well, let's keep going. It's getting to a really interesting stage. I guess what I also wanted to know, along the journey that you've, been a managing director of Laing and Simmons, you've grown the brand, the franchise, has gone so well. People realize that you care. What about your own property investing journey? Have you also jumped into investing yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I bought my first property with my boyfriend at the time and my sister when I was still living at home with mum and dad. So we bought a property in the west of Sydney, and eventually when my boyfriend became my husband, we bought my sister out and we moved into it. And then we stayed there for a few years, and then actually bought the house we're in now. We almost bought at Box Hill, but sadly no. So we're at Glenhaven in the northwest, and we also invest in property. We've got a very specific strategy around our property investment, though. We invest in our super fund. We've got a do-it-yourself super fund, and which is not that easy to borrow money in a super fund these days. However, we have some property, and we buy property that we can add value to. So we've bought property in, again, the west of Sydney on big blocks that we can add a granny flat to, and that's been really successful for us. We bought well at the right time before the market started to really kick out in areas like Blacktown and Quakers Hill. Yes. And yeah, so that's been our strategy.
Fantastic. So just wondering, why did you start to invest into the self-managed super fund? Could there have been other opportunities to be able to invest outside of that to grow a portfolio there as well?
Yeah, there could. Yes, absolutely. There could have been. Life, life gets in the way. My husband and I were both in when we bought our first house, when we first got married, was back in, it's our 30th anniversary this year. So
congratulations.
Thank you. 1991 we got married, and you're too young to remember, but interest rates were like 17 or 18% in those days.
I do. My parents told me about that story.
Yeah, I know. Shocking. And our first home was only, I think we paid $140,000. So our mortgage, by today's standards, was not very big. But it literally got to the stage, because we were both, I was a recruiter in the early days there, and then I moved into the shopping centre. My husband was in a job that he got a lot of overtime. So that was how my commission and his overtime was basically what we needed to get through. And I remember very clearly that we we actually didn't have enough money to buy food to get through the week. And so we would have to have dinner at my parents one night a week and at his parents one night a week to get through. And I can remember randomly seeing a pizza ad and buying pizza for dinner one night. And I stressed for the rest of the week because that was really our food money for the rest of the week. And it's like, Leanne, why did you do that? So, you know, so I guess life gets in the way. And then by the time we started to have the money to actually invest in property, we just decided that super was the most tax effective way for us to actually do that. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's great. It's great because a lot of investors probably hear this as well. And they're just wondering what should they actually probably do, you know, how they structure things. I mean, this is not the show for it, but I guess for other strategies out there, self-managed super funds is actually a great way to be able to grow that portfolio too. Even though, you know, in terms of leveraging and so forth isn't as easy, but for
and you know, for us, the properties that we decided to buy, we bought them for return, for yield. And so that's not necessarily the strategy for everybody either. So you've really got to look at your own circumstances and take some advice from the professionals. I'm a professional real estate franchisor. I wouldn't pretend to give people advice around property purchasing and building a portfolio, but
no, it's great, I think, just to be able to hear that story, because everyone comes from a different background. You know, no matter where you are, you know, it's still possible, even if you're in real estate as a real estate franchisee or franchisor or even real estate agent, you know, people still do buy property because it's a great way to be able to build their wealth as well.
Absolutely. And one of the things that a lot of our business owners do is talk to their own teams and say, okay, what are your dreams? And often it's about getting into property for the first time. And so, you know, they'll put a strategy together to help the employee to actually save the money for a deposit, connect them with the right mortgage brokers, and it's really important to understand what banks look at, for example, when they're going to lend you money, and things like Netflix and Uber Eats, and like they go right through all of your spending, and all of those things is really, if you know that in 3 years' time you want to buy a property, then you need to get that stuff sorted out now ahead of time. There's no point in 3 years' time going, right, I want to borrow money, and for the bank to go, oh no, sorry, you spent too much money on Uber Eats. Well, what do you mean? Seriously, it's crazy what the banks look at.
They want to reduce their risk. You know, they want to make sure that this person who's going to be borrowing from us can actually return back the money that, you know, they're going to be borrowing, especially paying the interest on a monthly basis. So I can see why they're looking into all this.
Although, I mean, my argument's always been, well, you know, I mean, I've got a serious shoe habit, as anybody who knows me will attest to. And I'm like, well, I can afford to buy shoes at the moment, but if I wanted to get another mortgage, I would have to stop buying shoes. So why is what I was spending last month relevant on what I'm going to be spending next month? But the banks don't see it that way, right?
No, we're just a number to them, unfortunately.
Yep, very true.
Yeah, very true. So, Leanne, I'd love to be able to talk a little bit more about, I guess, whether it be through the franchise or through your property investing journey. I'm pretty sure you've gone through, you know, a lot of interesting, I guess, ups and downs, let's say. And I'd love to be able to just get sort of a learning lesson. Maybe share with us what would have been one of your worst, maybe investing moments, or one of your worst moments across business that was a really, really strong learning lesson for you.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great question. And probably the most difficult time personally was when my husband became redundant, and he was out of work for quite some time. And so we had a couple of properties at that time. So I was in the very privileged position that we had an apartment in the city, and we had the house here at Glenhaven, and my husband travelled a lot for his job. So when he was away, I would go and stay in town. And so yeah, very, you know, it's an expensive way to live, right? Two separate residences, but yeah, it got really hard for him to, you know, it was at a time when, you know, GFC, and yeah. So anyway, it was really hard, and trying to look forward to things was really hard because we didn't have any money. I could just cover our expenses and stuff, but there was no money for luxuries. And so my husband, God love him, he would make my breakfast, lunch and dinner every day. So I would have a packed breakfast to take to work and a packed lunch to take, all of that sort of stuff. He was wonderful. But it was really hard. And it was really hard to find things to look forward to. But what was super important to me, reflecting back on it, I had a really beautiful lifestyle, as I said, living between 2 properties, driving a sports car, wearing designer label clothes, traveling, business class around the world. Rob would be in Hong Kong and say, "Hey, baby, I can't get home. I've got your ticket though. You're leaving tomorrow. You'll be in Hong Kong for 4 days." And I would get to the airport. It'd be a first class ticket, care of frequent flyer points, of course.
Yes.
And so we had a really incredible lifestyle. And I thought that all of that was really important. But what I learned during that time was that's actually not the important stuff. I can live without all of that stuff. I can even live without my shoes if I have to. What was important to me was our relationship, and that we were okay and he was okay going through this difficult time. And so as much as I would be in a very different place financially now, if that didn't happen, I'm glad it did, because it really shone the light on what was important to me, and that has shaped the way I've done things moving forward, to be honest. Yeah.
What a beautiful story. Wow.
I don't tell that story very
Thank
often.
you. No, it's
yeah.
No, and I really appreciate that, because it goes to show, there's so many great things in life, and you can have a wonderful lifestyle, but at the end of the day, it's that relationship with, whether it be your husband and your wife or your family and so forth, because that's something that you can never have,
that's right. You can be the richest person in the world, but if you don't have those, if you don't have those things, those people, those relationships. And I was doing a training session not long ago with my team, and the speaker said, "I want you to write down really quickly, write down the things that make you happy." And I thought, oh, okay, that's a challenge. And the things that I wrote down really surprised me, even. I mean, because I do love to shop. But those weren't the things that, I wrote down sunshine. Sunshine makes me happy. Dancing makes me happy. But having time to read a book makes me happy. And I thought, oh, okay, I've actually got to try and work some of those things into my day more frequently. There's no reason. I've got a beautiful back deck here. There's no reason why I can't, when I'm making my phone calls, sit out on the back deck and do it rather than sitting here. I mean, so just quickly thinking about the things that bring a smile to your face every day, the simple things. It might be like I've got a 7-year-old niece who is just completely adorable. Talking to her always makes me laugh. So, making time for those things, it's really super important.
It is. It's those human connections that it just makes us realize, wow, life is more than just what we have, all these external things. It's great to have them, but at the same time, there's memories, those things that you have in your life is just more important as well.
Yeah, for sure.
It sounds like that was more of also an aha moment too, because you went from, the challenges that you faced with your husband over that period of time to that. Do you think that could have been your aha moment, or did you have other aha moments in your life that you could share with us?
Yeah, I've had a few. That was definitely one of them. And certainly that leadership, the stuff you do when nobody's watching, that was a really important lesson for me too. But I've also every time I get approached to do something, I go, I can't do that. Why would you want me? So when I was promoted to managing director, they said to me, "Leanne, we think it's time that Laing and Simmons had a managing director." And I thought to myself, I cannot believe after all this time they are going to bring somebody in over the top of me. How rude is that? And they're like, "No, Leanne, we're talking about you." I'm like, "Oh, okay, right, good. Okay then." When I was approached, because I was actually tapped on the shoulder, I was on the board of the REI because I've been really passionate about improving the education and training standards for real estate agents.
Yes.
They tapped me on the shoulder and said, "We'd like you to consider being our next president." And I'm like, "You for real? Like, I can't do that. Why can I do that?" And I thought to myself, "Oh, Leanne, get over yourself. Of course you can do it." And even I still have those things that happened to me. My networking group, Real Women in Real Estate, we were pre-COVID, we were running events around the country, and I started that group back in 2015 with a friend of mine, Tanja Lee, who's based in Melbourne. And Tanj was coming to all of the events, and she's a fantastic speaker and trainer. And she would run, like, she would be the host, if you like, and she would run all of the stuff that we would do on the nights. And she just said to me, "Hey, Lee, this is getting too big. I can't travel like this anymore." And I thought, well, I can't do it without Tanj. Hold on, I'm seeing a theme here. I always immediately think, no, I can't. And of course, I can and do. So yeah, it's a real lesson. Don't all that talk. And I'm not one. I don't really have a lot of negative self-talk. I'm on pretty good terms with myself. But even still, there are those moments that it's just like, oh no, you can't do that. It's like, well, and it was even, you know, when it came to buying the Laing and Simmons business, I was really scared of making that financial commitment, having that financial risk at this point in my life, thinking I can't bring the brand what it needs. And it's like, get over yourself, Leanne. Of course you can. You know exactly what the brand needs. Just have a crack. Have the guts to have a crack. So that's what I'm doing.
I love that. It's so encouraging to hear that, because I think a lot of people have these sometimes negative thoughts in there, and you've shown, you know, a true example of how to be able to overcome these things, and you've just taken action too as well. And that's what I love about hearing your stories, and it's just a great inspiration for so many listeners out there. And thank you for sharing that as well.
But yeah, it's yeah, you've got to be prepared to be uncomfortable. You know, just take a bit of a risk, and you know, I don't care, you know, like I said, I'm 58. I've got lots of friends who are sort of having conversations around retirement, and it's like, well, I've just bought a business, so retirement's just not even on my radar, you know.
You might say in a decade time, you know, look at it and go, wow, I've achieved all that. Might be retirement then. So
yeah, I've got a plan for a decade. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to because we've got a really high caliber board at Laing and Simmons that I've put together, and my you know, my 10-year plan is to transition to become chairman of the board, or chairperson of the board at that time. So hopefully I'm going to learn a lot from our current chairman, and that will be my career progression at that age. So yeah, that's my plan.
That's wonderful. So tell us a little bit more about that. We kind of touched on the purchase of that. Tell us a little bit the background behind it, because I'm sure a lot of listeners may not be aware of what has been done. But what is that? What did you do firstly, and how did you actually come across that purchase?
Yeah, great question. And it's only just happened, right? We haven't even settled yet. But we were bought by back in 2012. We were bought by a business, and it started great. It was really good. They added so much value and so much energy and stuff to Laing and Simmons, and it was going really well, because there was a lot of things that, you know, real estate has changed significantly in the last few years, and franchising needs to change with it. And so I was very clear on what I thought we should be delivering, and you know, they were on the same page, and we were all working very happily along. And then a few things changed for their business, which changed their focus, which is perfectly fine. I completely understand. And one of the things that I do with my team every year is we write a letter to ourselves in December of every year, to be read at the December of the following year, we write it as if we've achieved all of these things. So it's like a business plan by another name, right? And 2019, I struggled with it, and I wasn't looking forward to 2020. Little did I know what was going to happen in 2020, right? Yeah. But I just didn't feel that I could deliver on what I knew the brand needed, because the owners didn't agree with me. And so 2019, in my letter to myself, I said, it's December 2020 and Laing and Simmons have new owners. So that was not my plan to be one of the owners. Couldn't be further from what I was thinking about doing. But we had some conversations with some people who had showed some interest in buying the brand. And I realised that it probably wasn't going to go well for some of the franchisees. They weren't going to be happy with another big brand buying us. And so I had a couple of franchisees who heard on the grapevine that it potentially could be sold. And so they said, you know what, we'd actually like to buy it, but we'll only do it if you buy it with us. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm tired, and then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know what, actually, this can make some sense. And, you know, one of the struggles with being a franchisor is getting the individual business owners on board to actually implement the stuff that head office wants to do. Yeah. There's always this, you know, this tension. If
to and fro. Yeah.
And so I thought, well, if I can get a big enough cohort that actually owns the business, then I can use them to demonstrate that my ideas are sound, and then we can roll it out more easily to the rest of the group. And so very quickly, I realised that a lot of the franchisees wanted to get involved. So we had to actually limit the, we've got a few small shareholders, but there's a group of us that have got 10%. There's 15 of us all up. We've held 10% aside strategically to have available for maybe another franchisee to come in, or a corporate team member. I don't know, we'll see. Yeah. But yeah, that was how it came about. It was just sort of me. I rang the CEO and said, you know what, I actually think that it's time for you guys to think about selling us. And he said, okay, I'll talk to the board, but I get it. And that's what happened. And it sort of all happened pretty quickly. After that, I know I've been in a bit of a whirlwind.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's subconsciously you wrote it down, but not knowing how it'd be done, but it ended up happening. Isn't that amazing?
I know, it's really bizarre how, and I'm not really, you know, I'm not into all that woohoo stuff, but it happens. You put it out into the universe, and yeah, that'll serve me right.
I was going to say, sometimes you just got to, before you write it down, think about it.
Think it through. Yeah, careful what you wish for, right?
Wow, that's amazing to be able to hear that. And I remember there was a rebranding as well too, because the logos look different. When did that happen?
Yeah, I've rebranded twice in my 25 years at Laing and Simmons. So the first time was back in the year 2000, the same year I was promoted to general manager. And the second time was in 2012 when our new owners came on board. And it was really interesting. It was an interesting process the second time because the new owners actually said, look, we want to be collaborative with the franchise network and we want to know what they want. And so it was really interesting. And the way that we did it, we had a big focus group in the city and we talked it all through. And then we got everybody to write down the things that they wanted to definitely keep and the things that they didn't want us to have or they wanted us to change. And they wrote down each thing on a Post-it note. Because what we were finding in some of these meetings is the loudest people get heard. But that's not always the majority view. Yeah. And so one of the things was yellow signboards. We had a whole lot of people who appeared to want to have blue signboards. And it sounded like that was the majority. But once we actually went through that process and everybody stuck there, like keep the yellow signboards. And so all of a sudden we had all these Post-it notes down the wall with keep the yellow, keep the yellow, keep the yellow. And the loudest people who wanted the blue just looked at that and looked at me and said, oh, wow, we didn't realize everybody felt that way. So I thought, wow, that's a really good tool to use when in those kind of meetings. And so, yeah, it's a big, expensive exercise to rebrand. Yeah. And then, you know, we paid for all of the offices to be redone. And that's, you know, that's expensive because it's between about, you know, a very small office might be $5,000 or $6,000, but it might be, you know, 12 or 15 offices, $1,000 an office. So it was, and that's just the external signage. So anyway, yeah, it was an interesting process.
It's phenomenal to be able to hear that. I mean, it's so important to be able to get feedback from your franchisees, and
It is,
you know,
yeah.
you wouldn't be able to do a lot of things without their support as well. And now that they've become owners of it, they've even taken that by their, you know, commitment and also ownership that they will actually help roll that out.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're able to disclose or share, you know, what
Sure.
are some of the visions for the franchisees in the franchise?
So much. So yeah, I think we need to provide better support in a lot of areas for the franchise owners. It's very hard to build a rent roll from the time that you start a business because most of our new franchisees are salespeople, and salespeople aren't detailed like in the property management, like you need in the property management space. So I think that we can support them really effectively in the back end in that kind of area. I think the area of recruitment, but not just recruitment, the onboarding and ongoing engagement of people, I think is really important. You know, salespeople, real estate business owners, by and large, are small business people. They're really good salespeople. They don't have a lot of actual business skills. And so I think that we need to provide a lot of assistance for them to run better businesses. So yeah, there's so many opportunities. I've got literally dozens and dozens of different things that we can do, but obviously I can't do everything at once. So I held a strategy session with my 15 business owners a week ago, and we're all on the same page, which is really super exciting. So I'm just writing my business plan now, and that I'll deliver to the board at the beginning of next month. And yeah, away we go.
That's exciting.
Really exciting.
And in terms of, say, property investors who actually, you know, want to work with an agency like Laing and Simmons, how can they actually benefit from that? Because I know there's a lot of property investors out there who have, you know, properties that they may want to sell, or they may want to put on the rent, you know, to manage and so forth. How can they work closely with agencies like yourselves? Yeah,
that's a great question because a good real estate agent can make a difference to the value of your portfolio. So you really need to, and not all property managers are created equal. You've got to make sure, you know, one of the problems with property management is there's a lot of turnover of staff. So you want to try and find somebody who's got a really established career in property management. Ideally, if they're a business owner or a part business owner, means they're not going to go anywhere typically.
Of course.
But, you know, if you've got somebody who, you know, sit down with them and talk about what your overall goals are, and it might be that the property that you've got right now, you might be better off selling it and investing in 2 properties somewhere else, for example. You need to take in the overall, the yield and the capital growth of your particular property in the area where you are. You need to think about the maintenance requirements, and you've got to make sure that if your agent is advising you on maintenance, that you actually do it. We have some landlords who want to set and forget. They don't want to spend any money on maintaining their property, and that's it's dangerous from a tenant's perspective. It's dangerous financially for the landlords, because if your agent says to you, okay, you need to make these changes, for example, the back step, it's a bit rickety, and you go, oh, don't worry about the back step. The tenant falls through. In fact, I've got an example right now. The tenant claimed $470,000 damages from falling through a back step. It's your insurance premiums go through the roof. That's one tip for property investors. If you don't have landlord insurance, please go and get it.
Yes, absolutely. It's a must.
It is. And have a look at the domestic violence provisions in those insurance policies, because the obligations on landlords and agents under the domestic violence provisions changed in New South Wales not that long ago. So make sure your insurance covers that, and also have a look at how it would treat you during a pandemic if you don't get any rent. So that was an interesting time for all of our landlords as well. So yeah, you really need to Yeah, you need to be actively looking at your portfolio, and you can grow it much more effectively if you have conversations with your agents and get recommendations from your agent about what next. And if your agent can't help you in that space, go and find a new agent.
Good advice, very, very good advice. And I think that's the thing, being a property investor myself as well, you want to work with people who are going to be staying for long term, because I have to say, with the agency I've worked with, they've been a great agency, but they have had 3 people turn over in the last
it happens a lot.
Yeah,
property management, it's a hard gig, property management.
Yeah.
It's a really hard gig.
You've got to work with it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, let's talk a little bit about mindset side of things.
Sure.
You've achieved a great career, you've achieved so much in what you've done, especially within the brand.
Sure.
Share with us, maybe, have you had any resources or mentors that's helped you, coached you along the way to be able to get to where you are now?
My very first business mentor is now the chairman of Laing and Simmons. So that's, I keep my people close. But from a mindset, interestingly, I've mentioned that I started the Real Women in Real Estate Network, and I started that because I was nagged to death about it from a couple of girls that worked for me. Because I've been around for so long, I've got so many connections. They're like, we want you to share those connections. And so the very first event was in October 2015 in Sydney. And 2 weeks beforehand, I sent an email out to a dozen women that I knew that had a lot of women in their team and said, look, this is what I'm doing. If you think it's a good idea, 65 people turned up to the first event. Wow. The first event was a sellout. And I was still standing there going, I don't get it. I don't understand I don't understand. Why? What do people want? And so, but I could see that there was a need. And so we sort of quickly went from, one event in Sydney to literally we've done events in everywhere except for Tasmania. That's the only state we haven't done an event. And even New Zealand and Los Angeles, would you believe? And I didn't expect, I did. Yeah, we've got over 2,000 members. And I didn't think that I needed it. I really didn't think that I needed it. But what I've found is that there's a core group of these women that have become really close friends, and they're incredible women. They're coaches, or they're trainers, or they're business owners. They're very skilled, caring, intelligent women, and they are my go-to girls now. If I've got a really big decision that I'm struggling with, usually I'm a bit closed. I'm pretty comfortable with my own decision making typically, but if I've got something that I'm really struggling with, depending on what it is, there's a few of them that I will reach out to depending on what the problem is, just to get another perspective. But I'm also naturally optimistic, and whilst I do get down in the dumps from time to time, I know that it won't last long, because I won't let it last long. I say to people that I give myself an uppercut, like, get on with it, girl, get on with it. I'm able to pull myself out of the funks that I get into them. Even this whole lead up to buying the business, I spoke to a business mentor who I really care about and value, and he thought it was a terrible idea for me to get involved in the business, and I felt really helpless after speaking to him. I went into a depression for a week or so. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go to next. I didn't know what to do. And then I realized that it was about his stuff. It wasn't about my stuff. It wasn't about what I was capable of. So I think you've got to be really careful when you ask for feedback. Firstly, if you don't value the person, don't value the feedback. If you wouldn't ask them for advice, don't take their negativity. But even when you do ask for feedback, take it on board, think about it, and then choose. Does it fit or doesn't? Because nobody really knows what's going on in your head. Nobody really knows what you're capable of. Sometimes you don't even know what you're capable of until you have a crack. I just do things that fill your cup. For me, I need to exercise. I need to go to the gym. I need to, do that sort of stuff. and maybe go for a massage. And
Absolutely.
yeah. And I just managed to pull myself out of it. I don't know. I wish I could be more prescriptive about how I do it, but I do it often.
It's great that you're able to provide that perspective and insight into it, because I think a lot of people are not able to, and because you're able to share your own experience, people can probably relate to that already. I can relate to it already. I've been through hard times like that, and just as you said, you need to get out and do some exercise, just go for massages.
Yeah,
I'm the same. Not massages in particular.
Don't eat junk.
Yes,
look after your diet, all that stuff. But yeah, people, particularly women, I've won a number of awards recently, most influential woman in property, thought leader awards and all of that sort of stuff. And so people make the mistake of looking at me, and I speak on stage quite regularly now, and I'm comfortable doing it. I wasn't always, but I am now. And people make the mistake of looking at me and thinking, oh, well, Leanne wouldn't have those negative voices in her head, or Leanne wouldn't second guess herself, or, Leanne wouldn't feel like an imposter. And, excuse my language, but bullshit, Leanne feels all of those things. And so don't look at anybody and think that they don't have things that scare them, or things that they need to work on, or things that intimidate them. We all do. We all do.
Wow, that is very, very inspiring. And I think a lot of people, a lot of listeners will be able to take that away and go, wow, if Leanne can do it, I can do it too.
Exactly. That's like hashtag, if she can, I can too. That was my hashtag when that I used when I first became president of the Real Estate Institute, because I'm only the second female president in 115 years, and I'm the first president they've ever asked to stay for a second term. So that was that was my hashtag in the early days. If she can, I can too. Because it's so true, right?
It's so true. Congrats on that. That's amazing. In terms of books wise, do you like reading books, or do you
love reading books?
Okay. Do you have any books you could share with us that would be one of your favorites?
Yeah,
one
actually.
or two.
I love Delivering Happiness by Tony Shea, the late Tony Shea. How tragic was that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I was lucky enough to go and visit Zappos when I was in Vegas a couple of years ago. So that was an incredible experience. And I would suggest to anybody who's interested in customer service, grab that book, Delivering Happiness. And if you ever get to Vegas, reach out to the team at Zappos, because they do organise tours, and it's definitely worthwhile. So that would be my all-time, that would probably be my all-time favourite. Carol Dweck's book on fixed mindsets and open and growth mindsets. That's a really, really good one as well. If you makes you realize why some people are, like, for me, I've got a growth mindset, but other people look at why not and why they can't do something, whereas I look at how I can. So that's a really good one as well.
They're great books. Definitely. I've heard of the one for Tony Sappos's book, Delivering Happiness. That's a great book. But the other one I definitely have to check out. So thanks for sharing.
Do. I'm just trying to think of the other ones. I'm halfway through a couple at the moment, and I can't even remember what they're called, which is really embarrassing.
That's okay. I think the listeners will have enough to chew on that just to get started anyway.
Sure.
Fantastic. If, say, you met yourself, say, 10 years ago, what do you think you would have said to her?
You have no idea how much you're capable of. Yeah, absolutely. I never saw myself here. I never saw myself as a leader. I never saw myself, winning awards like I've been winning. Just, go for it. You're capable of so much more than you believe.
Been an amazing journey for you, definitely.
Yeah, it really has. It's actually been lovely to we don't spend very much time reflecting on how far we've come, and I don't sit around thinking, wow, Leanne, you've done so much, you're fabulous. But I'm, sharing this with you now. It's like, wow, it's really been an incredible journey. So thank you for asking such great questions.
You're welcome. That's what I love about stories like yourself. It just really, really allows us to be able to learn and be inspired by you as well too. So thank you for sharing.
My pleasure.
Moving forward, I guess, into the future, say in 5 years' time, which we kind of already know, we've already touched on it a bit, but what do you foresee yourself in, say, 5 years' time? Where do you see yourself at?
Yeah, I have got a brand that's growing. I've got a shareholder base that is also growing and happy and engaged. I have multiple revenue streams for the business. And I have a lot of happy people around me.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I can definitely see that. I'll be definitely touching base with you in 5 years' time to see.
Yeah, definitely.
I bet you, as soon as you said all that, that's probably going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just thinking I better write all that down in my letter. I've obviously already written my letter to myself for 2020, and some of that's actually in there. Oh, sorry, for 2021.
2021.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Last question for you, Leanne, is how much of your success is due to your skill, hard work, and intelligence, and how much of it is because of luck?
Well, the harder I work, the luckier I get, right? And certainly I do believe that there is an element of luck for everybody. But my success is down to taking opportunities when they're presented to me. So instead of saying, if I go back to when I was a recruiter, I was only there for maybe a month or two, and the manager of that operation left. And I was approached and said, would you like to be the manager? And I'm like, Jesus, I've just been here for 5 minutes. I don't even know the job. No, I can't do that. And that was a mistake. I should have actually said, yeah, let's do it. And so moving forward in my career, that's what I've always done. I've gone, yeah, I'm going to have a crack, even though I don't know that I can do it. And, I don't even know how I'm going to do it. But you say yes and you work it out.
And that's the thing. It sounds like the people who actually offered you those positions had confidence in you. So if they have confidence in you, then you're just going to be able to action it because you'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's such an important point, right? If the people around you, if you value the people around you and you think that they're smart business people and they're saying to you, we want you to be the general manager or we want you to be the president, it's like if they can see it, a lot of people do see more in you than you see in yourself. So yeah, believe them and have a crack.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, Leanne, it's been a real pleasure to be able to have you on the podcast today. I love your story so much. If listeners want to reach out to you and find out a little bit more about what you do, listen to your podcast and so forth, what's the best way to connect with you?
Wow. Okay. So email is just leanne@lsre.com.au. I am on Instagram, the Leanne Pilkington, also on Facebook. So yeah, just reach out. And if you do reach out to me on, and also LinkedIn. So if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, just say that you heard me speak on this podcast, because I get thousands of LinkedIn requests, but if I see one from one of your listeners, I will absolutely accept it.
Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. It's been wonderful to have you on the podcast today, and looking forward to getting more and more great responses from our listeners as well, and also connecting with you on LinkedIn. So thank you again, Leanne.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome anytime.